I don't know how to describe it other than like a demon type of sound.
But it's silhouetted, hulking, every bit of 5.5 feet wide, 13 to 14 foot tall, pitch black.
The one thing that ran through my mind when I had this encounter was I don't have a big enough gun.
Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to Creek Devil.
Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Creek Devil. We have Larry with us today. Larry, how are you doing?
Doing great.
Brian and Tom, fellas, how are you doing?
Pretty good.
Very good, thank you.
Well, Larry, usually I'll just give you the microphone, and then we have questions as we go. We'll go into that, but go ahead and tell us what happened.
Well, I'll just kind of break it down here. My name's Larry. I've been in the military. I'm 50 years old. I've had 40 years basically of outdoor experience, hunting and fishing. Most of my skills have been honed around the military and the outdoors. I've had 4 different encounters throughout my 40 plus years. I guess the first one will start when I was 5 years old. It was in Wimberley, Texas, which is right outside of Comal County, Texas. I was around 5 years old. My grandfather owned a small ranch that we did a lot of deer hunting on. I was hunting with my mother on a small ground blind that we had made, I guess about 500 yards from the main cabin. On that evening day, we were in the ground blind, and my mother was hunting facing towards the feeder, and I, of course, at 5 years old, was running all over the place inside the ground blind. And about 20 minutes before dark, I remember turning around, and I saw this large creature standing, I guess today it was about 20 or 30 yards behind us in some pinyon oak trees, just staring at us. And I was telling my mom, I said, "Mom, there's a hairy man looking at us." And she said, "Oh, honey, be quiet. We're hunting. You don't want to scare the deer." And I said, "No, but Mom, there's a hairy man that's looking at us." Well, she blew it off. She made me sit back down, and I remember popping back up about 2 or 3 minutes later, turning around, and he was gone. To that day, we had a few problems with break-ins and stuff in our main cabin, and the only thing they ever took out of there was food out of our freezer that we had. We kept venison in there. And they would actually, whatever, we didn't know what it was at the time, but it was ripping off the top of our freezer and just taking most of the deer venison. And that was really my first sighting at a young age in Texas. My next sighting, which was probably the longest sighting and probably one of the scarier sightings, was my dad was a police officer in San Antonio, Texas, and he decided to take a job outside of being a police officer. So he was offered a job in Possum Kingdom, Texas. That's about 2.5 hours northwest of Dallas, Texas. I don't know if y'all have ever heard of Possum Kingdom, Texas, but it's a 1,600 acre basically state park. And they have 3 sections of camping. My dad took a job as the head warden there and also game warden for the 3 counties, and was in Archuleta County, which was a pretty big county. From the main road, you're looking at 30 miles just to get to the state park. I mean, it was in the sticks. Nothing but large ranches surround the 1,600 acre state park. So you kind of get an idea where I lived on the main peninsula of the park there. For the game warden and the head ranger, they had a special housing area for the game warden there, and we were housed there with my family. It was right on the water there, waterfront. There was very large herds of white-tailed deer that would gather there during the winter months. People used to feed them year-round, so it was nothing to have 30 to 50 white-tailed deer, that would pile up together at all times. One, I guess it was in January. We had it in front of our house about 200 yards down. We had a floating pier dock that would go across a cove. If you kind of picture that, the cove, the floating pier was on one side of the cove. You could enter the pier, and then it stretched all the way across the cove to the other side of the cove. So you could either enter both ways. Well, the crappie fishing was good at night, like 2 a.m. in the morning. And my mother, I asked her if I could go out late that night. She was a night owl, and I wanted to go fishing because the crappie didn't bite until around 2 a.m. in the morning. So that night she said, fine, be careful, and, go out there for a couple hours and don't freeze. It was cold that night. I remember it was a full moon. I was out there no more than about 30 minutes. So kind of paint a picture there. We had a full moon night, and then they had I guess you would call it like stadium lights almost, if you would call it, 2 of them that would lit up the pier, the surrounding area, and the water for safety reasons, of course. And it was pretty bright that night with the moonlight and the actual lighting. I was there fishing. All of a sudden I heard just a ruckus. Just the whole woods on both sides of the cove were just lighting up. There was deer running everywhere. They were coming out of the woods. They were so scared that they were jumping in the water and actually swimming from one side of the cove to the other. I found that very odd because normally deer don't like to get in the water unless you're just, forced to get in the water, or they're traveling from one island to another or something like that. So upon seeing the deer run into the water and hearing the splashing, I saw something running, like corralling the deer that came out of the woodside coming towards the pier. Well, I dropped my pole and I looked, and it was this huge upright figure. And it was in the dark, but it was coming closer and closer into the light. Now, you got to remember there was a moonlight night that night. So it started out as like seeing a silhouette. Then as it got closer into the stadium lights, it would, you could actually make out more of the body, what it looked like, everything else. Well, as it was hurting the deer, it grabbed 2 of the deer that were in the end of the, I guess it was the end of the herd, and he grabbed one of them, and he picked it up from the rear, this creature, and it broke both back legs at the same time. You could hear snapping, like bones just pop, pop, and it was very loud. And at the point when he snapped the legs, you could hear the deer actually making this horrible bleeding noise. Just, I don't know. I'm not going to try to copy what it was doing, but it was just an awful, terrible bleeding noise from the deer. And then after he broke the legs, he dropped it on the ground, and the deer was trying to use his front legs to pull himself forward, but never got too far. After he dropped the deer and it was kind of immobile, he left and kept on chasing the deer. But when he broke the legs, he also made a whistling noise. It was very loud. I remember thinking, why is this? First of all, I was trying to take in what I'm seeing, what it was actually doing, and I couldn't, I don't know. I just didn't, I was trying to put a round peg in a square hole. I just could not figure out what these things were. Now, obviously, they were upright. They were huge. I would say height-wise, between 7.5, 8 foot tall. Just wide as wider, maybe 2 football. If you pick any lineman on a pro football team and put them together, you're probably looking at the width of this creature. He made a whistling noise at the point when he dropped the deer. Then I heard an immediate whistle back from his first whistle. And I didn't see anything, but the deer were still, hurting, trying not to go in the water. Out the corner of my eye, I see another creature come out from the other side, and he was trying to stop the deer from the front. So you got one in the back who's already killed one, or at least injured it. You got another one who's corralling them, trying to get them towards, together, but they're going in the water. So it was just a ruckus it was just crazy. It really was. Now, I didn't see the second creature catch anything. He was just kind of carousing him, holding his arms kind of out, and the deer were turning. I was noticing I had my eyes focused on the biggest one. The second one that came up to the whistle was smaller. I would say it was probably only 7 foot, and it wasn't as wide, quite as wide as the first one. And he never picked up a deer that I could see. He didn't catch anything. But by the time I focused back on the other one, he disappeared. He walked off. I guess he just went and filtered back into the dark of the woods, and that was it. After the first one, I guess he figured he's not going to catch any more deer. They got what they came for, what they could catch. He turned around. He looked at the pier at me for a few minutes. It seemed like a few minutes. It was obviously just a couple seconds. He turned around, walked over to the deer that he broke the back legs on. With one scoop of his arm, picked it up. And I'm assuming it broke his neck because it was making this terrible bleeding noise. And then when he scooped it up and put his hands around what looked like around the neck area, it stopped. I mean, all noise ceased. It was quiet. After that, he put the deer under his underarm and just turned around and walked right back in the woods. So that was my second sighting there at Possum Kingdom Lake. And after that night, I was so scared, I gathered my fishing pole, all my fishing gear, and literally ran off the pier back to my house. I ran in the door. My mother was like, "What's wrong? You look white as a ghost," and calm down. And I couldn't talk. I mean, I was just stuttering. I was 15 at the time, by the way. So, a young man at 15 seeing something like this, I was just in awe. I told my mom what I saw. She sat me down and she said, "Son, we had a lot of mountain lions there on the state park too. And so everybody saw the mountain lions from time to time." So she said, "Well, so it was probably mountain lions. You can talk to your dad about it tomorrow. You didn't wake this man up. He went to bed at 9 o'clock. I mean, the house had to be on fire to wake this man up. So it wasn't going to happen that night." I talked to him the following morning, explained to him what I saw. He just said, "Son," he said, "we'll talk about this at a later time." He said, "Right now, we're going to keep it between me, you, and your mom. We're not going to say anything to anybody else. If you do, they're going to think you're crazy. And we're just going to leave it at that. We're not going to, I'll talk to you at a later date about this when I feel you're ready." And that was pretty much it. What he said was law at that time. So I didn't say anything else. About a year later, he told me of some sightings that he had on the park. And he said, "I believe what you said." He said, "But there's not going to be anybody besides your family that are going to pretty much believe what you saw." So he said, "It's best to keep, what you've seen and everything to yourself." And I did. We had some other helpers that there were Ranger 2s and stuff that worked on the park there. And one night I kind of let it slip, and I talked to one of the other helpers there on the park, and he just said, "Look, Ed, that was my dad's name," and he said, he gets from time to time people that come and bring sightings to the office there, and we have to basically write up a report. Once we get these reports written up, we put them in a file, and then we call up to Austin, where the main Parks and Wildlife is. We have to hand them over to a gentleman that deals with these type of sightings, and then it's hush hush. No, nothing else said. That's it. We pretty much file them this way to this gentleman. Nothing else is ever said or done. So apparently these government people and the Parks and Wildlife, from after talking to my dad, they know about these things that are happening in our parks and wildlife systems. People are seeing these on, a yearly basis, and they're turning in reports. It's just they're not doing a whole lot about it, from what I understand. Now, I don't know for sure what's going on at the Austin level, but that's what I've heard from the few people that I've talked to about this in my family. So, that's about all I can tell you there, as far as that sighting goes. We'll go on to, I guess, sighting number 3. This happened in Pagosa Springs, Colorado, and that's in Archuleta County, Colorado. It's on the San Juan National Reserve. it's a very large wilderness area up there. We were on an 8-day hunt. We got drawn for first rifle season up there. There was 4 guys, me and 3 other hunters that were camping together. The first day we got there, we went and applied for a bear tag, an elk tag, and a mule deer buck tag. That's what I had, and that's what most of the other guys had picked up. We got in, set up our camp the first day, got everything out. We were going to proceed to hunt that following morning, which we did. I am always one that believes in if you're going to kill something, you got to work for it. So I was the one that always backpacked in 2 or 3 or 4 miles, the farthest distance I could get away from the other hunters. I always had better success. It took a little more work, and I'd have to leave usually before daylight. I'd leave a couple hours before daylight and, have to travel through the woods at night and get to my spot before, daybreak, so I would have a good hunt. So it was pretty spooky, but I always seemed to make it okay. That morning I left early. I got to my spot before daybreak, set up. I had opening about 30 minutes after daylight. I had shot a nice mule deer buck. I went over there, made sure it was expired. I went ahead and cleaned the animal, gutted it. At that point, we had to backpack it out because there's no way you could carry the whole carcass out. So we had to cut it up in quarters and put it in my backpack to carry it out. So I left behind a pile of guts, of course, the carcass and the skin behind, because that was just something you left behind. You carried out whatever kind of boned meat you could carry out in your pack. So I carried it out. It took about an hour and a half, 2 hours to get all the boned meat out. Took 2 trips. I got back to the main road and got back to camp. Told the guys, showed them, the horns and everything. We talked about it. And I decided I wanted to go back that following evening and hunt and try to fill my elk or bear tag. So we spent a couple hours at camp, got ready because we had to leave early. Of course, just hiked back out there a couple miles, 2 or 3 miles. Left back up, got out there, and I was going between the 2 canyons to get to the open meadow that I was going to hunt in. And go ahead. Hello?
Oh,
Hello?
No, I think you're okay there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Thought somebody asked something. I was walking back through the canyon trying to get to the meadow where I was going to hunt that evening, and I was passed right through where I had left the guts, the carcass, and the bones. And I noticed they were all gone. Everything was gone. There was, a little bit of fur there and the blood and everything else, but everything else was gone. And I said, I found that very odd, being I was only gone maybe 3 hours, 4 hours max between morning hunt and the evening hunt, getting ready to go into the evening hunt. So I didn't think anything of it. I went on to keep on going. I had about another couple hundred yards to get to where I was going to hunt, which was, by the way, I found it a little odd. We got there that morning, back up just a little bit. We got there that morning before the day hunt. We went out and did a little bit of scouting. And I found this, I guess it was like a brush blind that was already made. It was made out of fallen pine trees. They were broke and they were put into like a little teepee-like structure almost. And I thought, man, this would be a great place. I don't have to build anything. I can just get in there and I can hunt because it overlooked that meadow. So I was like, I'll just go ahead and use this as a deer blind. So that's what I was hunting out of when I shot that mule deer that morning. Well, I was going back to that same location to hunt in the evening when all that, everything, the carcass, the guts, and everything was gone. So I was going forward to get to that structure to hunt. And then all of a sudden I felt this, I don't know how to explain it other than fear, just fear like I've never felt before. It was almost like, it was like I was going to die. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I was getting sick to my stomach. I froze in my tracks. I had my gun on my shoulders. I didn't have it in my hand. Now you got to remember, when I hunt, I wear total camouflage pants, camouflage shirt, camouflage gloves, and I also put on a camouflage head net to conceal my head and the whites of my face and everything. So I was totally camoed out. When I felt that fear, I just stopped, and I couldn't make it. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't have, gone any further. I just was froze, and I just couldn't figure out why. So I looked around. My heart was coming out of my chest, and all of a sudden, I hear this snap, crack in the bushes, and here come these two elk females coming out of the bushes, and they almost ran me over. I mean, they were just full speed. And I took a big deep breath, and I was like, man, that's what I'm afraid of. That's what I'm having all the fear about. It just didn't make sense. So I saw the elk blow past me, and the fear didn't leave. And I was looking at the direction the elk had gone right by me and kept on going. Well, as I turned back my head to the right to get back on the path, I mean, I looked right at this creature. We were no more than, I'd say, 30, 40 yards at the most, maybe probably 30 yards. And he was right at the edge of the wood line. And he was right next to a tree, and he was staring me down, and we locked eyes. And now you got to remember, I had a head net on, so I don't think it could see my eyes through that head net. I mean, he might have, but I don't think so, because it does conceal the face. So when we locked eyes, I just almost lost my bowels. I'll be honest with you. I just felt like I was going to milk. We were looking at each other, and he had this look at him like he was trying to size me up. He was looking straight at me, and he would go rock from one side to the other, and he would look at me. He rocked back to the other side, and his posture would he almost was like blowing out his chest, like if you puffing it out forward, and he would put his arms kind of wide to the side, and he kept puffing his chest out, and he would go right, and he would go left, and he kept looking like sizing me out or trying to figure out what I was. Well, it seemed like minutes. It was probably actually only maybe 8 to 10 seconds, 15 seconds at the very most, but it felt like forever. So after he started puffing his chest out and everything and swaying back and forth from side to side, kind of looking at me, he kind of let his chest back down. You could see he kind of got a little more, comfortable would be the word, I don't know, or just kind of quit puffing his chest out. And he made this like whoop noise, just whoop, like this, turned around and bolted right back from where he came from. But he came out from the same direction as the elk females came out. So I'm assuming that I was in the, wrong place at the wrong time. He was chasing the elk deer, out through that meadow, and I just happened to cross paths with him. That's the only thing I can think of at that time. But that was the closest I ever had been to one of these creatures. I got a really good look at him, and like I said, it was a stare down for about 8 to 15 seconds. So that really messed with me. I couldn't function. I really couldn't. After he left, I turned around and I literally ran, between running and walking as fast as I could back all the way to camp. I got back. The guys showed up that night and asked me, why I didn't hunt. And I just told them, I said, I saw something out there, guys, I can't explain. They said, well, tell us, what'd you see? And I told them what I saw. They started laughing at me, saying it was probably a bear standing up. I said, no, guys, you know how long I've been hunting, 40 plus years. You know how many bear I've killed. This was not a bear. I can tell you that. Well, of course, they kept mocking me and everything, and I just had enough. I just shut down after that period of time, and I didn't say anymore. And they kind of, let it lie, kind of poked fun at me the rest of the night. But so I couldn't sleep that night. I had nightmares. I didn't hunt for the next 2 days. We were there a total of, going to be there for a total of 8 days. We were only there the first day. So I didn't go hunting for 2 days. Then on the